Hey, this Ramon channel is Alpha 4, and I'm going to call this video the Fanfic Fallacy. Atheism's gift to apologetics. I've been interacting with atheists for a while on YouTube, and unfortunately, skeptic YouTube has kind of died out in popularity. I actually really enjoyed watching and listening to a lot of skeptics. It's part of why I started doing my apologetics. It wasn't because I was necessarily inspired by some of the Christian channels, is that there were no Catholics at the time responding to the skeptics, which, you know, kind of sucks now that they're no longer really doing what they used to do. Now they're going after SJWs because now there are more Catholics on YouTube to do these kind of responses to atheists and to YouTube skeptics. And I say YouTube skeptics because that's a very specific category. Okay, so what is the fanfic fallacy? It has to do with the fact that because atheists and skeptics don't respect any authority when it comes to the Bible, and I don't mean the Bible itself as an authority, I mean as in any of the parties involved in deciding what the Bible consists of. They will throw away all the categories and all the qualifications that religious people, namely the church fathers and the early councils, used to decide what was in the Bible. And that criteria is very simple. It had to be within a certain date of the last death of the last apostle. It had to be consistent with a certain set of principles that were already established, specifically in the Old Testament. And it had to be, and it had to have a strong apostolic tradition behind it. And it usually had to be involved in one of the churches or being used as an active liturgy in a church. The Old Testament also had a similar set of criteria that the rabbis used to decide what was in the Old Testament. There's a really great story about the compilation of the Old Testament in Egypt, in Alexandria. I think that's a really wonderful story that you guys should look into if you want to learn more about the Jewish side of the story. But what's important for this conversation is the fanfic fallacy. And what's the fanfic fallacy? Well, because you're not respecting any authority, and you're not respecting any type of authorship, suddenly all versions of a story become valid. So not just Twilight and not just 50 Shades of Grey, but also all the other fanfics about Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey have equal authority. So now you have no idea what the original story is. So it becomes much harder to decide what to listen to and what a character is. And maybe you have a specific version of a fanfic that's more interesting or more entertaining than the other. Well, if that's the case, if someone's fanfic version of Rambo is more interesting than the actual movie version of Rambo, which is more interesting than the original book version of Rambo, well, then you're going to go with the more interesting story. So a lot of times atheists will argue against a version of Christianity that just doesn't exist. They'll argue against a kind of hybrid version that exists only in fiction. They'll combine things like the prophecy and Ghostbusters and Supernatural and the TV show Lucifer and other entertainment like that. And that will be the basis of what they're arguing against. Or they'll go to classic literature and they'll go to Paradise Lost or Dante and Virgil, and they'll go to Hesiod and they'll go to Homer, and that will be the version, that kind of compilation of all those fictions will be the version of Christianity that they'll argue against. And that bleeds into the other part of the fan fiction, which is that they'll take non-related works and they'll equivocate and make it equivalent to the Bible. So they'll take the works that the Bible was polemicizing against in some of its books, It'll take stuff like Zoroastrianism and the Mesopotamian myths, and it will apply that to Christianity, when Christianity doesn't have anything to do with it. Christianity comes straight out of Judaism. But because in Judaism you're not allowed to say the name of God, they will take the names of gods from people around them and use that as placeholders in their text. Well, because of that, the skeptics and atheists will just take those stories from Zoroastrianism or those stories from Mesopotamian myths and mix it into the theology or theodicy of Christianity. And it doesn't mix. It doesn't mix at all. So it becomes this weird fan fiction. And we have been mislabeling that fan fiction a straw man. And it's not a straw man. It's for it to be a straw man, they would have to know that they're arguing against ideas we don't believe. They don't. So I think it's a fan fiction problem. They're confusing the fan fiction with the legitimate text because they don't respect words like heresy. They don't respect words like apocryphal. They don't respect words like pseudepigrapha. To them, it's all the same material. So because of that, and they don't respect any authority that divides all that out, they end up having this really messy understanding of Christianity. You add to that YouTube Christians. Notice how I call them YouTube skeptics. Well, you add to that YouTube Christians who don't have a strong foundation of their faith, but they have a lot of the same fiction in common with the skeptics. And their explanation of religion has that same entertainment-filled thread. Well, so now they can argue about something in common. So they're arguing about a fictional religion that doesn't really exist. And they're calling it Christianity that they're arguing against or arguing for. But it's neither. Neither the YouTube Christian who only has an understanding based on fiction, nor the atheist who only has an understanding of religion based on fiction, are arguing against or for Christianity. They're arguing against a fictionalized fanfic version of Christianity. Anyway, this is getting a little bit long, and I kind of already made my point. Let me know what you guys think. See if that's a good explanation. See if that's a new fallacy we should add into the mix. Sorry about the sound in the background. It's 7 in the morning, and I'm washing my clothes.